There's nothing quite as satisfying as watching a well-placed shell land directly in the centre of a pack of mechs, all the way from the thump of the mortar, the whistle of the shell and the crack of an explosion, and the crack of your enemy's bones. How far can we push this though? How many explosions too many? And what are the real-world equivalents of these kind of explosions? So let's start with the obvious. These are mortar shells, stock and trade of missing your target by a mile. A single shell when damaged or shot will explode 5 tiles and deal 50 damage to any pawn caught in the blast radius, near or far. A stack of 25 mortar shells will explode 9 tiles in every direction, and obliterating anything in the local area. In reality, a mortar is just a drain pipe with a metal plate on the end, which is designed to be picked up and moved after only a few shells launched. But a Rimworld launcher will spend pretty much its whole game in one place. The mortar got its name from the Latin word mortarium, directly translating as receptacle for pounding, like a mortar and pestle, or your mum. Now what we've done here is covered the entire map with mortar shells. Here is 1.5 million mortar shells. Here is Toby. Toby's lifespan can be measured in seconds. When slowing this down, you can see heavy shrapnel coming in from an easterly direction, with strong gusts of flame and a light showering of body parts later on. Guests can't be assured of their safety, well, yeah, no bloody wonder. Now if we imagine that was a standard 1 kilogram charge in each shell, we just exploded 1.56 kilotons of TNT. This is about the equivalent of a major chemical explosion or a lower end tactical nuke. The most recent example of an enormous detonation is the Beirut fireworks factory, estimated to be just over 1 kilotons of explosive force, and that left an entire district in tatters. Rimworld's main explosive force is chem fuel, which you get by milking the literal bomb cows called boomlopes that wander the map, or by rendering down potatoes and other natural fibres down to their base components. It's kind of a mix between petrol and dynamite, where dynamite was invented by Alfred Nobel from acclaimed Nobel Peace Prize territory, who after seeing a prematurely printed obituary about himself labelling him the Merchant of Death, decided maybe he should use his bang bucks to promote humanity a little bit more. The usual explosive range of chem fuel is a piddly 1.1 tiles for a single chem fuel, but by using this crazy formula, it'll explode up to 3.5 tiles. But along with that, it'll jet out delicious petrol in all directions, and set everything else on fire around your base. This is actually how Hollywood explosions are made, as real explosions are all about pure percussive force, and don't do that much damage. Whereas film explosions are big bursts of petrol that are shot into the air and then ignited, which create that lovely golden roll of flame, but don't actually do that much damage. And this fire? It can spread pretty fast. Little side quest, how long would it take to set fire to the entire Rimworld world? If we assume for a perfectly round Rimworld, in a vacuum, standard settings with 100% generation, with no rain to put out the fire, we can start the math. Our Rimworld map is 250 by 250 squares, leading us to 62,500 squares per map. Around the circumference of the planet is 1,420 map hexagons. By doing boring maths I haven't used since secondary school, we can find the surface area 642,000-ish hexagons. We times these two numbers together to reach the astronomical 4 billion tiles. However, only 30% of that is covered in land, and only 75% of that land has an average temperature of above 0 degrees. So this comes down to 9 billion, a much more manageable number. Fire spreads outward roughly 1 tile every 24 seconds, and now you have 2 fire, and then 4 fire. If placed in the centre of the world, this fire only had to expand out 53,000 tiles in any direction to completely engulf all land tiles. So we can put an estimate of between 2.5 and 3.5 years before the world is completely on fire. Bear in mind all that was just napkin math, and now the napkin is on fire. A short section on the underappreciated grenade, which feels like it gets a short end of the stick bomb because no one ever played catch with their dad. The power of infinite explosions is underrated, as it can decimate enemies at the gate and is barely affected by shooting skill accuracy, and it had a guaranteed miss chance anyways. The term grenade comes from French word grenade, which is their word for pomegranate. A bit weird until you see what the original grenades look like, and yep, I'd definitely confuse those in a battlefield. And now some of you are already foaming at the mouth about Rimworld's much rarer explosives, Antigrain warheads. These can pretty much only be found as rewards for completing very difficult quests. These have such explosive power that it technically counts as its own form of damage stat in game called Bomb Super, and it can decimate tiles between 15 to 18 tiles wide, depending on your stack size. The grain in antigrain warhead doesn't mean it destroys crops, but actually to the tiny grain of antimatter that these launch. If these bombs contained just 1 gram of antimatter and were combined with 1 gram of regular boring matter like Doritos, both antimatter and matter undergo complete mass annihilation, letting out 100% of their energy as raw destructive power. This would produce an explosion of 43 kilotons of TNT, or roughly 2.5 times the size of the bomb that devastated Hiroshima. As a regular shell explodes 25 tiles and an antigrain explodes 676 tiles, this means it's 27 times more powerful than a mortar shell. Now, if we plant a field of mortar shells, tend them, water them, show them the love and care, we might get a bountiful crop of antigrain warheads come up in the spring. So naturally, now the entire map is now antigrain warhead, as far as the eye can see, there's only one thing left to do. If those really were 27 times the power of regular shells, that was 40 kilotons of explosions. If, however, that was a true gram of antimatter exploding each one of those, that explosion was 61 million kilotons of TNT, or only about 1600 times smaller than the Chicxulub asteroid that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. To sum up, the universe doesn't care about your colony's hopes and dreams. It only cared about thermodynamics, pressure differentials, and eating without tables. So next time you see a zzz event happen right next to your chem fuel storage, don't blame the game, blame physics. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment detailing your most catastrophic colony explosion, and remember, keep your boom loops protected and your explosives far, far, far away from your bedrooms. See you on the rim.